Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Jonasz Rawiński. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is heading to the US, hoping to salvage Europe's trade relations with America as Trump's so-called reciprocal tariffs have been placed on hold, at least temporarily. Can her personal rapport with the US president help her convey Europe's message and reignite economic cooperation? Joining us now is Sebastien Maillard, Special Advisor at the Jacques Delors Institute. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Dzień dobry, hello.
Good to see you. So let's begin with the overall plan. What do you think Giorgia Meloni has in mind when going to Washington and later on meeting US Vice President JD Vance back in Rome?
She may have several things in mind. Firstly, I think the timing of this trip is very important because, as you rightly pointed out, it comes at a moment where there is this pause of 90 days that President Trump has put on his tariffs, this part of it. And so it's a time to try to negotiate. And if she can talk in the name of the EU to try to facilitate a trade deal, that could be very helpful. Although, of course, she has no official mandate from the EU. I mean, this is part of the Commission. It's the Trade Commissioner Šefčovič was in Washington earlier this week, so she has no official mandate, but she can be helpful in the sense that the Trump administration doesn't recognize the European Commission as a true power in itself. So she can play that role in a bridge. But the other things she may have in mind, also perhaps more politically, is to both for internal domestic politics in Italy. As we know, in her coalition, she has to also deal with Matteo Salvini, who's very Trumpist, and they both target the same electorate in Italy. So I think she also has, for domestic reasons, to show that she is not out of the game regarding Trump. And thirdly, she may also have in mind her own role on the European stage, because she was quite successful. Remember, during the last European elections, her party was very successful. But then she was a bit outstripped. And now that we have both Macron and the future German Chancellor Merz coming back at the forefront, the place of Italy and her own place has to be put forward. So I think she's also trying to show the rest of the EU that she is someone that they must count with.
And would you say that she is well placed to conduct these talks? Because although, as you've mentioned, we have, for example, Chancellor Merz, who is going to take office very soon indeed. She forms part of the European elite that Trump's administration cannot simply dismiss as being representatives of the woke left. In fact, she is from the conservative wing, but also, for example, an ally of Ukraine. So do you think that this combination of views could be conducive towards some progress when it comes to talks also on issues other than the economy?
That's the ambivalence of this trip, and that's why it's so she's walking on a tightrope, and that's why it's so widely watched over, because she does have this personal ties with the U.S. president. You know, she was invited to Mar-a-Lago in Florida on the 9th of January, just before the American president's inauguration. She has been invited several times at conservative conferences in the U.S. So yes, she applauded after JD Vance's speech in Munich. So yes, she had these ideological affinities that can be an asset for the EU to bridge with the Trump administration, that we know it's very difficult for the Europeans to deal with them. But at the same time, she is a staunch supporter of Ukraine. She supports the coalition of the willing. She has participated in many meetings there. She also Italy backed the retaliation on tariffs against the US. So she's trying to play on both sides, which is, of course, a very a difficult exercise, but perhaps needed in this moment of where all solutions to deal with this difficult Trump administrations are welcome. So maybe her ambivalence can prove to be useful. Or on the contrary, if that trip fails, she is the problem is that she is not completely trusted by her European partners because of this ideological affinity. So we never know exactly on whose side she is, but that can prove to be useful tactically, politically, in such a moment.
But this brings me to my next question. You've mentioned picking a side. A couple of years ago, this would have been unthinkable. The transatlantic alliance was like this universal axiom. Now, things have changed, but do you think the alliance itself is still salvageable?
That's a big question mark. I think nobody can answer this question with a yes or a no, I believe. The future of NATO will I think we'll get more to that when the summit is held in June in The Hague. The French Minister of Defense is in Washington now, meeting his counterpart to prepare for this. And President Macron is also meeting with Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff in Paris. So the alliance actually will not be the same anyhow. We know that the Trump administration is expecting Europe to take much more its own share in the spending on defense, and we see these spendings raising, not least in Poland. So whatever happens, the idea that NATO could actually end up with less US seems to be the trend that we all have to prepare for, whatever, and could even accelerate. So in that sense, I know that the focus of Meloni's trip to Washington seems to be more focused on trade, and it has been prepared also with van der Leyen, the backing of van der Leyen, because up to now, Trump has not refused to meet with the president of the Commission, which would be the key person to speak with on trade. But when it comes to defense, where member states have their own say and have much more their own competence to prove, it's not really Italy that is a key player, but more countries like France and the UK.
But these two topics are becoming increasingly related. I mean, the US administration wants to make them related. Trump suggested that we would like this sort of single package. We want to talk about trade. We want also to talk about defense spending. This also ties in with what JD Vance said during his interview for the website Unheard recently. That interview contained the mention of Europe being a region that he cares about deeply, in his own words, but he wants Europe not to be a security vassal. These are the words that he used. A security vassal of the US. He wants Europe to be more independent. He in fact said that if Europe was more independent, it might have advised us against going to Iraq, because he agreed with European leaders and not the American leaders of that time about Iraq.
What
do you think about this? Because there are a couple of interesting statements there, right?
Well, I think we couldn't agree more on that. That Europe doesn't want to be a U.S. vassal. It's the irony that it's him who says it, and I think Macron would probably say the same in a Gaullist attitude that we need to take things on our own. The thing is that I'm not sure exactly that's how the U.S. administration really sees it. It all comes when the kind of weapons you purchase. If you purchase F-35s or American weapons, then you are dependent de facto, even if you paid for it yourself. It's not just a matter of spending; it's a matter of where you spend it and to whom. So it's also a matter of how the European defense industry is able to really be autonomous and also have nuclear deterrence on its own. So I think this is this is really what the aim of strategic autonomy, as it was framed by Macron, is all about. And we haven't waited for JD Vance to speak about it, to go for it. But again, I'm not sure that this will be the key in the talks that Meloni will have in in Washington. And I think it's, even though the Americans would like to put everything in one package, it's important that Europeans don't fall in that trap, because not everything is related. And what had to be done with Ukraine and the peace in Ukraine and Europe's autonomy in defense is different from the kind of trade war that the U.S. is imposing on its so-called allies. What is true is that for sure now is that we cannot trust America, but at least the Trump administration, as an ally. It is against the EU. It believes the EU is a foe, and we must be very cautious of any kind of deal with this administration that really takes the EU for granted and that wants to do everything it can to divide it. And I think what the difficulty of Meloni's trip to Washington is that there's the risk of division of the 27, which really can act as a block when it comes to trade. And this is where this trip can be useful if it can open negotiations for trade talks, serious trade talks between the EU and the US. But otherwise, if it's a way of diversion and of division among the 27, then it would have been not a useful trip at all.
Sebastien Maillard was our guest here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you.
And I'm Jonasz Rewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us for more latest news and updates.